Hi, Hongyi. I'm glad to have you with me today.
Hey, Lingya, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I think a lot of people know who you are. You are an architect by training, but you have spent the past 8 years pursuing a rather unconventional career as an artist who paints without a paintbrush. So I thought before we jump into all the exciting things you're doing now, could you give us an idea of what you were like when you were young and growing up in Sabah?
Oh, I think the first thought is I was quite a tomboy. So I was always out just chasing ducks and chickens, more chickens than ducks, chickens and pigeons, and picking insects from like leaves and climbing trees and catching tadpoles. So I was quite like outdoorsy, I think, and very curious. And I think growing up in Sabah and like detached from the capital city, I've always had a little bit of a um like I felt like, oh, all the actions in like KL, all the art competitions in KL. When is someone gonna actually like pay attention to what I'm doing here? But it was fun growing up here too. There was constantly a lot of outdoorsy stuff to get distracted by.
And you said art competitions. So did you do art when you were really young? Do you have your first memory of your introduction to that?
Yeah, I think I've always been interested in art, and I think a lot of, I mean, most kids are interested in like painting and coloring and things like that. But I think since I think in kindergarten, I do remember getting praised by teachers and my parents. Like they would go, "Oh wow, you think like your this like coloring page is done really well." And I think maybe it was that boost of confidence that really made me go, "Okay, maybe I'm good at this." And I think, yeah, so I think that was what really made me go, oh, maybe I can spend more time doing this. So I did find, I think, that whole comfort and security that in that kind of identity of being able to draw better. So I think that, I don't know, I think about that a lot and I go, oh, if I was young, like if I was that age and someone said I was good at running or something like that, would that actually make me want to commit more to that? It makes me think a lot about that.
Yeah. But I think you also took it a step further because you not only started drawing things like Sesame Street, but you also started drawing comic strips and selling it to your friends. So you had you had an entrepreneurial background when you were really young.
I did not. Oh my gosh, yeah, I did not realize that. I wish, looking back, that was kind of endearing because I did that with a group of friends, and I mean, I still remember who they are. It was like a group of like three or four of us, and then oh no, five of us actually. And after school, we'd like have like a little like meeting and go, okay, this is your magazine, this is my magazine. We have to have competitions, we have to have fun facts and things like that. We have to rent it out for like 10 cents each, and then we're gonna like try to get more people reading it by having competitions, and this is like the amount of pocket money that we're gonna put aside, right? So back then, like it didn't feel like a business thing. It was more like we wanted eyeballs to look at whatever news we were trying to spread in our exercise books. So that was really cute and endearing. I think that was like the early form of blogging, but in an exercise book.
And do you get the eyeballs? What were your sales like? Do you remember?
So we had like 50 kids in a class, I
You
would
sold to
say.
all of them?
No. It was we because I mean I wouldn't make like 50 books, right? I didn't think about scaling it in that sense. So it was one exercise book. You read it for the first hour and then you're done. And then like you're like the second person in line. So we had like a whole list of who was gonna rent it. And then like I think every week we updated it. So it's like, oh, update, just like continue reading it. So it would like get like more and more filled up.
That's brilliant. Do you remember how much you were making at the time? Do your parents even know about it?
10 cents each time you read it. We didn't really make a lot. It wasn't, I think I was not as like capitalistic. It was more like, oh, it's so nice to receive some money. There was no real goal. I wish someone had coached me though, but I felt so bad because our teachers made sure, I think after, our teachers confiscated it after a year. They did. They actually came, like, I remember someone reported us that we were making money in class. And then, actually, I remember who reported us. And then,
Oh no, that person is blacklisted for life.
oh my gosh. And then like the teacher came in and she was like, I heard that there are these magazines going around in class. You guys have to stop this. You're going into your sixth, like, primary school, like, form, no, not form six, primary six. And then we were having like our UPSR, right? Like the
So
major exams.
primary six is when
Can't
you're
do this
12.
anymore. No more distractions. Don't distract your classmates. So we stopped. We did this in primary 4 and 5.
So primary 4 and 5, for those who don't know, is when you were 10 to 11 years old.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. And did your parents know about this?
I'm sure they know. Yeah, they mentioned about it. I think I would still have these books somewhere in my storeroom or something.
They gave it back to you in the end.
Yeah, they did. Or we didn't bring it back to school or something like that. But it was like, yeah, I have only fond memories of it. It's so like it came from such a pure place.
Yes, it did. So your dad is an engineer and your mom was a banker, but now she is baking a storm online as Chomp Mom, cooking everything from artisan bread to purple sweet potato mantou. So do you see yourself in them, in the sense of you've inherited the artistic streak, the entrepreneurial streak as well?
Oh, I think, yeah, I mean, they've influenced me in so many ways, for sure. I think if I had to attribute like any of my success to anyone, it would be my mom and dad, even though when I started going into art full time, they bawled, they cried. but but growing up, I think like dad's always been like very like structural, very technical, very practical. Like he would like one of my earliest memories of him, I think, trying to um, trying to train the way we, like me and my brothers, thought through things was he sat me and my brother down and he had a can of Coke and two glass bottles. One was really thin, like a test tube, and the other one was like kind of wide and like fat and short. And he would pour the Coke into both, and he'd ask me, like being the eldest one, which one do you want? Right? And I was like, oh, of course the test tube one. There's more in there. And he was like, okay, Ming, then you get like that one because your sister wants the better one. And he would pour it both into like an equal size mug. And I realized that I had like the short, like the one with less Coke. So he'd go, yeah, so like perception, right? And like selfishness and things like that. Like all these themes came out. I was like, dang, dad. So he's the type that's always very like, I think very practical and very technical. Whereas my mom was like the creative one, always trying out new things, making us like all sorts of cakes and breads and things like that. And then she was the one who taught me about Picasso and Van Gogh and all that kind of thing. So there was a bit of both from that I inherited from, I feel.
And I heard that
is right now. Sorry, go on.
And I heard that Picasso is one of the people that you look up to.
Yeah, I think I really love his art. I wouldn't say I like him I wouldn't have liked him as like a personal kind of person. He's gone through so many women. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, he's used them as his muse, and he's really expressed it through his art, and it's really impacted the way I hope to express myself through my art too.
You never want to do art as you were growing up? I understand you wanted to work at Pixar at one point, but then you end up doing architecture.
Yeah. I think I've always loved art, but always thought of it as not a very practical thing to do. And then, so I thought architecture would be good because it's a mix of technical and creative. And I think I remember like before flying over to Australia for university, I sat my parents down and I said, I really want to be an artist. I want to be an animator. You know, that's my dream. They're like, no, 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 no. Just get your degree first and then figure out what you want to do. So that happened, and I think I thought that after I got my architecture degree, that would be it, because I was pretty happy doing architecture until I stumbled upon not stumble upon, but until I started making art on the side and was discovered for it. That made me rethink things again.
Yeah. And what was the thought process behind you deciding to graduate from Melbourne University in 2010 and then moving to Shanghai, which is literally on the other side of the world?
Yeah. So I graduated, I think, December in Melbourne, 2010, and started applying for jobs. Couldn't get, like, hardly any jobs came out of Australia. I think I really wanted to stay back in Australia at the time. But the economy was not doing well. Construction industry was slowing down. But on the flip side, Asia was rising really quickly. And I think I sent out like 200 CVs. I had, over time, I had like maybe like 20 replies. 10 of them were like, oh, we like your stuff, but we don't have positions. We'll follow you under whatever. They never got back to me. But the other 10 were mostly from Singapore, Malaysia, and China, and Hong Kong. And I decided to go with Hassel because the firm that I eventually worked for, because they're an Australian company, and I thought, okay, maybe after a year I can get transferred back to Australia. So that was the kind of like the secret plan. So I never saw myself like actually staying on in Shanghai for more than a year, but I ended up staying for like 3 or 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, and I wanted to stay longer. I really really enjoyed my time there. And I think Shanghai was a bit of like a bouncing board for me to venture out into other things too.
So what was it like when you first moved to Shanghai? Can you kind of give us an idea, bring us into
Oh,
that experience?
I think my heart will always be like a part of it will always be there because, well, firstly, my grandparents are from Shanghai, so I do have relatives there, and I reconnected with them. I lived in one of their old, super old houses that like my ceiling was falling off and things like that. But it was just really meaningful to live with three 90 plus year old folks, and there was no proper heating in winter. There was no like cooling system in summer. um, but it was just interesting to see the way they lived. And I think Shanghai, especially at that time, was going through such a mix of contrasts. It was there were high rises coming up really quickly, and then there were all these old compounds that were being bulldozed. So it just felt like there was constant stimulation every time I stepped out of my house. There would be people like spitting on the streets, and like chickens being like killed on the roadside and then being sold on the roadside. It was like just like a makeshift market in front of my house. And then I would go into this really nice like 5-6 star hotel to like check out their designs and all that. So it was like, I think I needed like on some days I needed like this whole meditation like yoga session to like calm down. But it was exciting. It was so interesting to see how China was doing things very differently from the outside. And I think before moving to China, a lot of like family friends were like, "Oh, be careful! You're gonna be manipulated there. They're cunning and all that kind of thing. Be careful." But when I was there, like I think I learned that it's also a perspective shift, and when you know the local culture and the locals, you understand their perspective too. So Shanghai is like the city of 25 million people packed into a city living there, and the first time I tried to catch a bus to go to work, I got pushed out. So I thought, oh, dude, it's like survival of the fittest here. So you kind of understand where they're coming from. They're sweet people, but I think there are like situations that have pushed people to do things differently too.
And were people always willing to be very entrepreneurial and venture into new things as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's just in the blood. It's all right. So when I started working full time, I had left and right like local Chinese architects working with me. And okay, this is a little bit personal, but before I left from us, like left Australia, there was this guy who gave me this laser cut ring. It's really cute. And it had Godzilla like invading a whole city. It was really cute, like in a ring. And I showed my colleague on my left. I was like, look at this ring, isn't it cute? And he was like, do you have the cat files? Let's laser cut this and sell it. I was like, oh my God, like horrified. But that was his first reaction. So I think over there, I felt that people were very driven to find business opportunities. There were all sorts of experiments, all sorts of things running at like super speed. So that was interesting to observe.
And I think that kind of also influences you as well, because at one point you also thought of doing some kind of e-commerce venture.
Yeah. But this sounds like this doesn't sound as special right now, but at the time when I moved over, so every day after work, I used to take the subway back home, and on these pillars in the subway station, it would be just posters of groceries, and you could just like QR code scan it, and it would be sent to your house. So basically, they were trying to bring a supermarket into a subway station for people who didn't want to go to the supermarket after work. So I felt that, oh my gosh, it's so clever, it's so smart. I've never seen this happen before. So I started like Googling around, like, Alibaba and things like that, and discovered that there was this city called Yiwu that's totally dedicated to manufacturing samples. So you can find anything like a mug or like a cap for a jar or something like that. Anything in that city, it's just built for supplies and manufacturing. So a friend and I traveled there, and then we're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is so mad. This is where everything is made. And then for some reason we wanted to sell bicycle parts, and he was also a friend that shot my Yao Ming video. So as we were discussing this bicycle e-commerce thing, I was doing art on the side just for fun, and then he offered to shoot a time-lapse video of my Yao Ming thing and put it up online, and then that kind of got spread around, and then that e-commerce thing kind of fell to the sidelines. So if it didn't spread around, maybe we would be selling like bicycle parts now.
Yeah, but that trip proved to be really important, because if you didn't have him, you wouldn't have the video.
Yeah. So thank you, Joel. Joel is a really, really good friend. He actually was the one who named me Red. So he kind of jokes around that he gave birth to me.
That's hilarious, because Red actually comes from your surname, Hong.
Yeah.
And so they started. So how did he actually come about, though, this nickname Red?
He's a friend from Australia. So I think he's a little bit of he's funny. He gives a lot of friends nicknames. So I think I remember one night when we went out together with like a group of friends who were introduced to our group. He was like, oh, this is so and so, this is so and so, and he pointed at me, this is Red. So I thought that was funny. So it stuck from then on.
That's so funny. And did you end up buying anything from that trip to Yiwu?
I don't think we did. I think we collected a couple of samples because we looked at napkins, we looked at like random things, but to be able to buy, you had to there's a minimum order quantity, so we didn't end up doing that. But yeah, we were totally naive looking at all these things. We're like, oh my gosh, we can sell this. This would be, people would buy this, not knowing about branding, marketing, and all that kind of thing behind it. Yeah.
So this was 2011, 2012. It's your second year in Shanghai. And you, as you mentioned before, you were kind of doing art on the side, and you were doing this portrait of Ai Weiwei using sunflower seeds. And people didn't really notice that until you did the Yao Ming video, which was launched in January 2012. Can you tell us the whole thought process behind doing that video of Yao Ming?
Yeah, so the Ai Weiwei piece was done right outside the house that I was living in with my grand uncles and aunties. And my grand uncle actually shot that from the third floor down. I gave him my DSLR. I was like, it's on auto, just click. And
You can't go
so
wrong.
oh no. So yeah, I started out with really basic materials and skills. And then I think Joel came to visit Shanghai. He just quit his job. And this was December. He came over to Shanghai, was looking for inspiration. And I kind of like tried to get him on board on this whole e-commerce thing. And then and he shoots like wedding videos on the side. So I told him, I was like, oh, I'm doing the second portrait, and it's like this Yao Ming portrait. And he was like, oh, maybe I can take a video of it. And it was done in time lapse, and we put it up online.
How long
And
did
on
it take
YouTube,
you? How long did it take you to do
it was
that
really
thing?
quick. It was really quick because I think there was no expectations behind it. Like, and it was just my friends and parents watching it.
Do you have
So
like a trial run before that?
I did. It didn't work when I did it in front of my house because I think the wind was blowing too hard. And so I did it the second time right behind my Hassel, the office. And I think it was like just more secluded. So it was easier to do that. And it was on a Saturday. No one was there. Um, and Joel, it was about 3 hours, that video. And then I think the upload was about like 2 or 3 minutes, something like that. And it was, yeah. And then I think 2 weeks later, I found out that gizmodo.com posted it online. And then from Gizmodo, it went to like all other kind of news channels. And like today, when I think about it, I go, oh my God, that's crazy. It wouldn't happen today, even if I did the same video. I think maybe it was a novelty thing to see a time lapse of someone creating with like a random tool. But now the whole, I think, Instagram artist circle is quite saturated. There's a lot of these things now. But back then it was probably like a new thing. So it got spread around quite a bit.
Yeah, even MBA picked it up as well.
Yeah. That was pretty crazy. And then
Exactly.
like all the comments were a little bit daunting because they were discussing about like things like my dribbling skills and all that kind of thing. And they're like, why does she have no paint on her clothes and all that? Are these like editing skills? So it was interesting to read through all those comments.
So what was your feeling like seeing all these like comments build up, these likes build up? They went into the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. It just really sped up.
Yeah, yeah, it did. I think it was a combination of emotions. It was, oh, of course, that, oh, I'm getting recognized for it. And then, but there was also like, I think a little bit of anxiety because I was like, oh, what's next? Is this going to be like a one-hit wonder thing? What if I cannot produce anything after this? And then also I felt like, oh, I'm not a real artist. Why are they actually like, why am I labeled as even like an artist? That artist label was so foreign to me. Yeah, so it was like a combo of excitement and anxiety that I felt.
Yeah. So you had these questions, these doubts, but then you still continue on to your second art and then your third and your fourth. Like, how do you overcome those doubts?
I think I just continued doing it. A friend told me, because I was telling a friend about it, I was like, oh, I'm so scared. And he was like, just fake it till you make it. I was like, okay, I guess so. And then I just continued. So it's been a steep learning curve for me. I mean, I've had to like really bang my head on the wall a couple of times, like getting into like, like mistakes and things like that. But I've met really amazing people throughout my journey who've helped me get to the next step as well. So it's been quite an incredible journey.
Yeah. So your next few portraits were of Jay Chao, Zhang Jimo. Tell us how you came to decide on who to do a portrait on.
I think at the time, the inspiration really started from me wanting to tell stories about China and about people there who were highlighted in the media a lot. I felt that China was, I mean, it has a lot of its own flaws in terms of, how things are managed sometimes. But at the same time, I felt like it was such a misunderstood country as well. And I felt that a lot of these stories need to be told. And I thought it'd be easiest to highlight just personalities there through materials that spoke about their careers or their lives. So I wanted a person from each a different industry. So I started with an artist, then an athlete, to singer, Jay Chow, and then to filmmaker. And I wanted to continue that kind of theme. And yeah, that was how I chose my characters. I think it really thrilled me when someone from Norway, for example, went, "Oh, I've never heard of Jay Chow," and I'm like, "Are you serious? We grew up with him here." So yeah, that really thrilled me.
So were you getting more and more viewers coming on board and seeing your work? Was there growing interest and more media coming towards you?
Yeah. I had like a small following at the start, like during the Yao Ming thing. I set up a Facebook page after that, and then it built up from there. And it's been really fun connecting with people all over the world.
Yeah, and then it led you to the EG conference, which happened in the same year in April.
That was so quick. So the person who reached out to me, his name is Michael Hawley. He's like a dear friend and a mentor almost to me. He's the guy behind EG, and when he emailed me, I thought, no way, is this a scam? Is this a hoax? And I like Googled him. I was like, no kidding. Professor MIT who's done a bunch of things. He's brilliant. He's worked with Steve Jobs on Next and all that kind of thing. And I thought, no, this is not real. And we jumped on a call. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is real. He took a leap of faith and invited me to go over to the States to speak about my art in May. And at the time, I just started out. So I thought, okay, I have to like, do another portrait of like an American or something like that. And then so it's more relevant to the crowd there. And I chose Mark Zuckerberg. And yeah, I think that was when my parents realized that, oh my gosh, this fun side project is kind of actually happening. It's real. And I think it freaked them out. So I think they flew over right before the conference, and they're like, "Are you sure what's going to happen?" and all that kind of thing. And then in the end, we decided that mom and dad should go over for the conference too. So they came with me, and that was when they realized that, oh, my daughter is not that crazy after all. There's a room filled with crazies here.
Who are also successful.
They're doing all sorts of different things. So what I love about Mike is he puts equal importance and respect in the sciences and the arts. So he had like amazing scientists discovering like incredible things, to musicians, to artists, to astronauts, to chefs, to everything.
Yeah.
So and that really just opened up our eyes and made us go, wow, the world is that much bigger. It's not just confined to whatever you study.
Because
so I think that, yeah.
Because the EG conference is actually quite a big deal. It was something of a turning point for you, wasn't it?
It really was. And I think meeting all sorts of people and having all that conversation with them, they expanded my mind a lot. And after that, I think my parents were like, okay, I think you know what you're doing, like, and we trust you also. Like we have to trust this, because they met all these people who trusted what I was doing. And yeah, so that was really something that changed my life quite a bit. And I have to thank people like Mike, who actually believed in what I was doing.
That's incredible. And you were still working as an architect at the time and doing art on the side. Soon after, you had a conversation with your boss.
Yeah. So after EG, I had a couple of commission requests coming in, and two were particularly big. The bigger one was Hewlett Packard, and they wanted me to be a part of this 30-second TV commercial that was going to be aired in 4 different countries, including China. And I thought, oh wow, like maybe I should give this a shot. So I did that on the side while I was working with Hassel. Did that during the weekends and had friends coming in to help me like put things together. And then after it was shot, my boss had a chat with me. So I thought, oh my gosh, like this is when he's like, this is not cool. this is not cool that you're like focusing on something else. But to my surprise, he was super encouraging. He said, so I know you're getting all these like requests. Have you thought about going into it full time? And I thought, oh no, you're gonna like, Peter, you're gonna like fire me, right? And he was like, no, you should really think about this, because if you were my daughter, I would actually really think that you should give this a go, because you never know where it might bring you. And if you're worried about finances and all that, you can come back after 6 months. Like hassle's still here. And like he gave me that safety net. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like first of all, we're like, this boss is amazing. Like it's rare to have someone like that. And also like he's given me a safety net. I have no excuse to not venture out and give this a shot. So I did that. And then the first day when I quit was I sat in a cafe and I was so lost. I was like, where are my colleagues? Where is like the project manager? What's gonna happen? What is next? So yeah, so that was day one for me.
Oh wow. And I imagine you must have had to break the news to your parents. And how was that conversation?
Okay, I think my dad came to the Hewlett Packard shoot with me. He was the person who went through like my contracts and all that. I had a friend who was managing it, but he was also helping me, like just taking care of the whole thing. And when he realized that, hey, I think they gave me a good offer. They gave me an offer that was more than my salary that year. And I thought, I was a little bit like smug. I was like, I'll be fine. Getting paid so much. And then and then he was like, dude, Yi, have you thought about that? That's what my dad called me. He goes, Yi, have you thought about taxes? Have you thought about, now you're your boss, you have to pay for all these expenses? Whoever you hire is all on you now. Your branding, your marketing, all that kind of thing. I was like, huh? So how much is that? He was like, you better put it all in your company and then use that like gradually. Don't go out and like feel like you own the world now. And I was like, what do you mean by putting that in my company? I had no idea on like company accounts and personal accounts and things like that. So he really sat with me through all that. And that was when I realized that, oh, whoa, okay. You have to be paid a certain amount to keep this afloat. So that was like my foray into business, I guess.
Oh my gosh. And how do you even think perhaps that this might not work, that after HP there might be not be anything else and you would go back? Do you give yourself a deadline?
Yeah, I gave myself 6 months. So I did have 6 months of savings at least to figure this out. I did have I think I was grateful that I did have a steady stream of projects coming in. But I think at the time, if I had to like advise my younger self then, I had all sorts of different projects coming in, and it was kind of confusing to choose what to take and what not to take. And that would really set what kind of projects I would have next. There were all sorts of things like, oh, do you want to make like, I don't know, say Coca-Cola installation out of Coca-Cola cans? And then there would be a gallery coming up to me going, oh, do you want to have an exhibition doing this? And then there would be like a skincare company going, oh, do you want to come in and like, do our packaging? So it's like totally different directions. And at the time I was like, oh, just take. And I think that really kind of confused my directions for a bit. So I had to take a step back and go, okay, I shouldn't be doing this. Because I think once your focus is diluted, your clients don't really know which direction you're heading towards too. So I had to be a little bit more strategic than that.
So how did you come to that decision on what your focus would be? And was that when you decided you wanted to be known as an artist who paints without a paintbrush?
I think I mean it's taken many years, I guess. It's taken me many years. Eventually it came down to, it has to be projects that I'm excited about, that like at least like the companies that I choose to work with, their values have to align with mine. And occasionally I get companies requesting me to do stuff, and I go, oh, do I come in as the artist or the designer that designs for you? So eventually, I think over the last few years, I have to make it very clear that I'm the artist here who is collaborating with you. I'm not here to make a product for you. So it comes from a very different place.
And I think that your tendency to use common day, everyday objects was quite evident from the start. You did one which is quite well known for the WEF at Davos in 2014 of the Teh Tarik Man. And that was
Yes.
a really, really massive project. I mean, you had what, 200, over 200 kg worth of tea bags,
Oh my
20,000
gosh.
even died.
Did I?
Yes, you did. I did. Yes, I'm sure. So
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I can't imagine that you could have done this alone. So how did you even go about conceptualizing this and bringing that team together and making that?
Yeah. So I did that in Australia. After Shanghai, I went back to Australia because I have my permanent residency that I had to fulfill. Like there was a certain amount of days that I had to be in Australia if I wanted to keep it. So I was in Australia, and then I had that commission come in, and I was like, oh, I really, really wanted to go for it. So I was like, has to be like a piece that I would be proud of. And I wanted it to be reflective um, of, of, of something cultural, like something really Malaysian and cultural, but not too cliche like the Twin Towers, for example. So I chose a Teh Tarik Man because I thought it would be humble, like a humble scene that that I could share with people about. And I really wanted people to be able to experience that smell of Teh Tarik in Davos. So I designed everything with a couple of friends, and then we figured out that we needed like 20,000 tea bags to do this. And I had like a month to create it, and I thought, no way, I'm not going to be able to do this by myself. So this was December, and a lot of students were on holiday, and so I put like a call out to get students in to help me tie these things together. So I think about 20 people came in to help me with it, and that was how it was done. Looked for a carpenter to get all the frame done, and then shipped it to Switzerland. The shipping part was a bit of a roller coaster for us, because I think we had a really short timeline of shipping it out and then flying to Switzerland and then receiving it. But when I got to, I think about a week. So when I got to Switzerland, it wasn't there yet. And I was like, freak out. Oh my gosh, Davos is happening in like 3 days. What do we do? And then we find out that it went to New York for some reason. Yeah, and we're like freaking out like massively, right? And then like, why did it go to New York? And they were like, oh, we just had to like do a detour, and they had to really check and make sure each tea bag had no substance. And I was like, dude, no way, there's 20,000 of them to go through. So it was like constant calling, just like trying to push them, and coming up with official documents from Davos saying that it's for, and like it's going to be displayed there and all that. So eventually it arrived, like after constant hassling for 3 days.
That was nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, if it missed those like 3 days of Davos, I would die. It almost missed it.
Oh no. And what
Yeah, but
other, and you were doing like really other very interesting kind of art as well. I mean, you would use cucumbers to paint a bear on the wall for a boba
yeah,
shop.
that was fun. That was just like that was a friend's shop, and they wanted something like that, so I did that for fun. That was a
Yeah.
fun side project.
I imagine one of the questions people always want to know is how do you come up with all these creative ideas? Because I mean, it's always something that's different, but it's always in
Mm.
a way related to the person or the thing that you're
Yeah,
portraying. So how do you even come up with that and the process behind it?
yeah. I think it comes up either from the person researching on the person or the subject, or I research on the material. So I think if it starts with the person, I start like a research on this person's background and what they've done with their lives, and usually like a thing would pop up, and I would probably delve into that thing. So if it was, for example, let's say, who's a good example? Hmm. I would
Aung San Suu
say Yao.
Kyi.
Oh, Aung San Suu Kyi. Yeah, yeah, that's a really good one. So this is before the whole Rohingya thing, right? So growing up, I was very, very inspired by her story and like her love for her country. And so I started like reading up a lot about her and watching her movies and things like that, the one with Michelle Yeoh in it. And then I noticed that she always had a flower, like flowers in her hair, fresh flowers, very elegant and like beautiful flowers. And then upon more research, I learned that it was a symbol for her dad and how he used to tie fresh flowers in her hair as a kid. So I started researching flowers. So that's how it comes about if it's doing a person's portrait. But I do have materials on the side, like say chopsticks, for example, and I go kind of figure out how they can be done differently, arranged differently. So it's usually this or that, and sometimes I kind of draw a line and like merge them together.
Yeah, I love that you brought up chopsticks because your most famous one is the one that you did with Jackie Chan, and you just can you tell us about that? Because it just looks like you really just had to you really needed a team as well because you needed so many
Yeah,
chopsticks to tie all together and hang it up just to do a portrait of Jackie Chan. So can you kind of explain to us what that was like?
yeah, that was the very first project where I had a team doing that with me. So this was, I think, a year after quitting Hassel. I had so my friend Aggie, who used to work for Hassel as well, quit Hassel to join me. I think she
Oh
was
no.
figuring out what to do, and no, she was probably still with Hassel at that point, and so
Peter's
she
probably regretting.
oh
He's like, no, should have never said yes.
no.
I'm losing my employees one by one.
Oh my gosh, no. Okay, no. It started like this, right? After I quit, Aggie joined because she read about me in Hassel, working for Hassel. And when she joined Hassel, she was like, "Where is this red character?" And everyone was like, "She quit." But I had a great relationship with Hassel. So I came in like every month or so to say hi to colleagues. And then Aggie would come to, so I still have like my table there. It was kind of still empty. So I used to like just like hang out there after work sometimes. And Aggie would come over and she's like, "You're red and you quit Hassel. And I'm here now. I read about you, you know?" And then and then so that was how our friendship started. And
That's hilarious.
then I think eventually I had these commissions from Chinese clients, and I needed help with contracts and things like that. And she's very good with words, so she helped me out with a couple of contracts. And then when the Jackie Chan thing came about, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like Aggie, Jackie Chan's like guys actually contacted me." So we flew to Beijing together, and then she was my manager, like immediately promoted manager. And then I mean, I needed to keep that image, right? And
I
then,
know. I
yeah.
hope you requested for outlandish things.
No, I was very nice. I was very nice about it. I was like, I think I was so intimidated when this happened. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this thing, right? And also very flattered because Jackie said that he read about me he saw my JCHO piece online, and he read about me in like my Zhang Yimou piece somewhere, and then that was when he realized it was the same person. And then he was turning 60 that year, and I think his team wanted to commission a piece for him. So that was how it happened. And after our meeting, we walked around Beijing and saw a lot of people throwing bamboo chopsticks by the roadside after going for like hot pot and things like that. And we're like, maybe chopsticks. Maybe we should look into chopsticks. It's such a disposable thing here. And Jackie was all about sustainability and all that kind of thing. And there was a scene that so we started like watching his earlier movies, and there was this scene in Drunken Master where he kind of chopstick fights with his master, and that inspired the scene in that video that I posted with him. So that was how it started. And then similar to the tea bag piece, I had 1 month of concept, 1 month of creating the piece. So Aggie suggested that that she and I traveled down to the south of China to a village where she's from that's like filled with bamboos around, and there were factories making all these like bamboo chopsticks. So she was like, this is the place to be. Everyone knows how to work with bamboo. You can work with the village that my mom lives in. There's like 20, 30 aunties that have nothing to do after they send their kids to work. And if you pay them, I'm sure they would love to tie chopsticks for you. And that was what we did for 2 weeks straight. It was awesome. I really wish I documented the whole thing. I really wish I took videos and all that. It was like freezing every day. We had our own fireplace, and then we collected our own firewood, and we'd be tying chopsticks. It was pretty amazing. And then yeah, that was how it was done. And then we shipped it back to Beijing and then presented it to him.
And I've noticed that a particular theme in your projects is that it's temporary installations. They're very large, but they're temporary rather than permanent. What happens to them after that? I mean, what do you do with the 20,000 tea bags or all these chopsticks?
Yeah. The chopsticks are more permanent because they are treated bamboo chopsticks. The tea bags, probably less so, although we did seal them as well. The fruit ones for sure are not permanent. So I do document them through photography. But I think after the Jackie piece, when I had commissions come in, I had to think about durability because I realized that, oh, they don't want it just for the photos or videos. They want to actually keep these things for goodness knows how long. So I started to research into more durable materials, also still everyday materials. So it was even things like hair, eggshells, and things like that. So there was a lot of research done in how artists from hundreds of years ago have used materials that have kept till today. So I would visit museums and look at, say, what the Mayans did, or what I think like the Qing dynasty people used to do with their vases and things like that, and research into those materials. So yeah, that's how I worked around more durable materials.
And I'd love to talk about how your architecture training influenced what you were doing, because I can't imagine that you would have been able to execute things in the same way if you went into art straight away. So how did that come into play, and how important was it in you being able to do the kind of work you were doing?
Yeah, I think that's been a learning process for me too, because I came from a very design kind of background. It was problem solving. Give me a site, tell me how big the site is, what your client's requirements are, and what I guess the boundaries and all that limitations are. So that was how what my thought process was. But more and more, I think as I'm in art a little bit longer, it is also about the emotions that you want to create, like and share with people. It's a lot about emotions and expressions, and it doesn't have to be 1+1=2. So I am trying to like bridge those two together, and even think less like a designer. But that design part will always be with me. I think that's why I go, okay, I need like 20,000 of this. I need to model this up like in 3D space and make sure it works. So a lot of my pieces are planned on the computer first, and then I go, yep, I can make them. And then I'll start buying all these parts and start making them.
So what's been the most challenging part of executing a project for you?
Oh, I think the most challenging part is still it is a very important part too. It is the doubts of whether it can happen or not. Like I always doubt whether my art is impactful enough, if it's meaningful enough, and sometimes I overthink it so much that it doesn't get executed. But now I think over time I've had to tell myself that, if it's good enough, it's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. And sometimes the more perfect it is, the less interesting it is, the more boring it is. So I think it's that whole getting over perfectionism thing.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up doubt, because you said in a TEDx talk in KL that when you decide to go full time, I researched.
Oh, impressive.
But I couldn't, okay, on the side, I couldn't find the audio version. They are like two.
Yeah. That has to be, I have to really look into this. So
Even
the
on the
TEDx,
TEDx video itself.
even on TEDx itself, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was all gone. But then I was lucky enough because I saw this interview you did with someone else who brought it up in a question. And I went,
Oh,
so that's what she said. Okay.
yeah, okay, the TEDx audio was taken off because I showed the Jay Chow piece and his music was on. So I think in YouTube it detects
Okay.
music that copyrighted and it took it down.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense. I thought it was some kind of copyright thing. But then I thought, no, there's no other way. But I had this question. So it sounds like I listened to the whole thing.
yeah, I should look into it because I go to the comment section on the YouTube page and they're all like,
Where did
"Where's the? What happened to the audio?"
And you started with this like was it a handwritten note? And I just looked at it and thought, wait, what is the story behind this? I don't know this. No one talks about this anywhere.
This is like a note that I wrote to my mom. I was
It
just
was
really,
you.
really angry with something she did, and I was like, blah blah blah, like trying to like blackmail her. And then I had like all these doodles. So it was really about how I communicated as a child.
So funny. Oh my gosh. So in your TEDx talk at the end, you actually said when you entered art full time, you decided to leave doubt behind. But I can't imagine that was a straightforward or easy process. So
Oh no.
how did you handle it?
I think I had to realize that I was running a small business. And I think as with any like business owner, there's always going to be doubts about what you're doing and if you're keeping this, like if you're driving your ship well. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, like where is my boss and where are all these people that are supposed to like be my pillars, right? You're your own boss right now. So there was a lot of doubts if I was doing things right, but I'm happy to, I'm not happy, but like I've learned to manage the doubts and kind of like dance with doubts. It's always gonna be there, but I'm comfortable with it now.
Were
Like
you
my
ever
friend
tempted to go back to
to art.
hustle?
No, because I think a lot about wanting to design and build like an actual physical structural house one day or building. I still want to do that, but I've not thought about working for a company after I quit. Not because I didn't like it, but because I really enjoy what I'm doing and I enjoy the autonomy behind it. And I think it fits my personality too. So I've had a couple of friends. At the time, I was all like, everyone should do this. So I had a couple of friends who decided to give their passions like a go full time too. And then that was when I realized that it doesn't fit everyone's personality, and that's all right too. There's no shame in like you know realizing that it doesn't suit your lifestyle, because a 9 to 5 is, I mean, working for a firm has its awesome perks too. You have like, you don't have to think about renting a space, you don't have to think about a lot of things, and that's okay. And whereas I have to think about all those kind of other things that comes with running my own thing. So it really is about what fits your personality and lifestyle. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of work and responsibility, which I can't imagine anyone wants. So what was it about your personality that drew you to this and made you realize I couldn't ever go back?
I think I am someone who likes doing things a bit differently. I really like being creative and experimenting, and I see my career as, I think my life as a whole series of projects that I want to work on. So I do have a little bit more of an appetite now for risk, a little bit more. Um, and and yeah, I think I just like putting things out there and seeing what happens with either the products or the artworks that I do.
If you had no limit on resources, is there a particular project you really want to do, but you haven't managed to do yet?
Like, is this like art related or not art
Whatever
related?
you want.
Oh yeah, for sure, of course. But at the same time, I have to say,
A
I
giant
feel like,
statue of yourself in summer.
yeah, of course. I mean, Statue of Liberty, what the heck? It has to go bigger. um, no, I think there's always like projects that I want to work on, but at the same time, I feel like my most creative moments come from limitations and boundaries and a place of scarcity, because when desperation comes, I feel like my most creative ideas come about at the same time. So I think I was able to work on all these projects when I was working for Hassel, because I had Hassel full time, and like on the side on the weekends, I just really wanted to carve out that time to make things. It was like a desperate thing for me to do. But I think the first year out of Hassel, I had all the time in the world to do whatever I wanted to do. That was the year when I was the least productive. That first year, because I was like, oh, it has to be so perfect. It has to be like, I have to be like max this out. And I think the more expectations I had of myself, the less I created. So I've also learned to set boundaries and like to not go too crazy with expectations as well.
So how did you think it through? Because you can't be a perfectionist all the time, but at the same time, you can't give subpar work. So where is
Yeah.
that line? How do you draw it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, it is, I have to remind myself it's okay to start small. It's always a work in progress. Start small. It's almost like prototyping a product, maybe. So I think an example was with this, the reason I'm not a virus project that I did. So it really started off with me talking to a couple of friends in the States, and they were like, oh, you know, it's such a bad time to be an Asian right now. Like, you don't know if, you know, you're gonna be judged for your because of your ethnicity. So I think when I heard that, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'll just make a piece that expresses this with whatever I can find in my pantry. So I dug around and found expired matcha leaves, and then created a portrait of myself with a mask saying I am not a virus. That's it. That started from there. And then I started to get like pretty fast responses and comments about it. Like it was more than I thought, more reaction than I thought I'd get. And I thought, okay, maybe I should turn this into a series and really look into it a little bit more. And then I started reading up all these articles about victims of assaults happening. And then I thought, okay, maybe I should document this. Just give it like just turn it into a series of 10, so that there is ongoing conversation. It's not just a one-off. And then and yeah, it turned into a series of different people's portraits that I was profiling. And then after the whole thing, I started to get like more and more interviews and requests on this. And then I think I started to get, so Teen Vogue contacted me to do a series, because it's like the Asian Pacific month, in Heritage Month in America. And then Post Malaysia, I'm doing something with them. So they want like a series of stamps of frontliners with like masks on. So that's gonna happen soon. And then a couple of other requests. And then eventually that turned into like my bigger weaved bamboo piece that was, you know, just a series of like I think 7 portraits of people.
And you use
That
the
was featured.
blowtorch.
Yeah. So I think this was a good reminder for me that things can start small. It's okay to start small, but I think with the bigger piece that I delivered, you know, I wanted it to be good, but not perfect. So I think that's an example of starting small and then turning it into something bigger.
Yeah. And you started with that whole I'm Not a Virus series, and then you continued on to Seeds of Hope, and just went on and on. It seems as though, and before that, you actually did this piece with Kenji, which was called Burn. And it was, some might call it a political piece. It was all about like an orangutan framed by these branches, and
Yeah.
you just set it on fire. And it's the message that, you know, if you don't do something now, you can never get the world back. So it seems like you are adopting a more purposeful approach to art. And I'm wondering if that is a recent occurrence and why that came about.
Yeah, I think I just wanted, at the same time, while I was doing all these pieces with interesting materials, I felt that I wanted something deeper than that. It wasn't just the aesthetics that I'm after. It has to be a message. And I go back to emotions. Like, art is what art can do more than like numbers or data can do, is it really can impact a person emotionally. So I thought that that's where the power of art comes from. And at the time when Kenji and I were creating that piece, you know, the Amazon forests were on fire, and then the Bornean forests were on fire too. So we thought that was timely, and then we created that piece. And this year, I just told myself that I wanted to create pieces to spread messages. Like, I want to stand for something, and more I feel this want to share about my heritage and culture and race and gender more. So these things are on my mind a bit more this year, and I wanted to express that.
And do you think that all artists should eventually have a purpose behind their art rather than just for aesthetics?
No, I think it really is up to the artist. It's really, like, art is such a personal thing. If like, I spoke to a friend recently about this, and she was like, oh, but like, I like what you're doing, but I don't want to talk about these things. I just want to make pretty things, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I think there's room for all sorts of art.
And do you not feel fearful, because these are can be quite controversial and even sensitive things, and you will invoke a lot of perhaps
Yeah.
negative reaction that you would normally get with just something that's pretty?
Yeah, I do. I did get a couple of comments that went, oh, you know, we like your art, but now you're doing this, and I disagree with what you're doing, and all that kind of thing. Yeah, so I do get those comments, but at the same time, I feel like you cannot please everyone too, and if you do, then what do you stand for as well? And it just dilutes everything you do. So I think it's important to know what you want to stand for as well, and I'm okay with speaking out about certain topics.
And there's one other topic we haven't covered yet, but I wanted to raise because it's quite important, and it's the issue of finances. I mean, like, when you were starting out before you quit, you were doing these large scale things, but you were buying everything in bulk. So how were you funding yourself, and how were you funding yourself after you quit and you didn't have that cushion to fall on?
Yeah. So all my pieces, I had to learn that when a client contacts me, I would hold back on the budget a little bit and go, let me get back to you. Okay, like, I make it very sure about what the client wants, this dimension, this timeline, and this concept. And once that's set, I have a clearer understanding of how much money is involved in it. If they wanted 20,000 tea bags, I'm gonna have to, like, figure out a way to get 20,000 tea bags, and that's gonna have to be included in my cost, in my fee proposal. So I do include that now, and it's a lot easier when that happens.
How do you even come up with how much to charge your clients, though?
That's tricky. It's been a learning progress, I guess. There's a couple of ways around that. So I think it depends on a lot of things. So what kind of client is it? Is it a client that is after a couple of images like Teen Vogue on the magazine, as opposed to a TV commercial for Hewlett Packard? That's a total different budget that they have. So I do kind of, this is more for a commercial client that I'm talking about, not like a private collector. So I do understand that there's a range and there's a different kind of need to it, and I guess I have to work on how much time I'm going to spend on it. If it's one whole month full time, then I kind of have a gauge on, oh, this is the amount of hours I have, and multiply that by how much I should be paid per hour. That's a very straightforward way of working on it. And then the expenses, and then the labor and all that. So that is like the minimum amount that I have to charge.
And how do people, for those who are just starting out, how do they even know how much to charge and what they are worth per hour,
Mm,
for instance?
mm,
What would your
mm.
advice be to them?
I think about how much time you're going to spend on it. That's just one way to go about it. How much time you're going to spend on it, and what materials, what expenses are involved. And then once you have that, I guess that's a starting point for you. But of course, with art, when it comes to like commissioning art, you have like 1 million, versus like $100. So art is it's very hard to put a price tag on art. But when you're starting out, you can go the whole route of how much time I'm going to spend on this, and maybe even think about how often you're going to get projects. You might have to charge a little bit more if you want to like sustain your practice for the next project that might come in.
And how do you balance between taking on projects, commissions that pay, and your own artistic interests? Because I can imagine they will always tie into something that excites you as an artist.
Yeah. There are some projects that I take up that do not pay as well, but I know that there are other things that come along with it. So it could be, say, values or like certain campaigns that I really believe in, like, or nonprofits and things like that. Sometimes it is the relationship with that particular client that I believe would be good as like a building block. And so there are certain clients that I've turned down because I don't use those products or I don't align with those kind of values. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just, it would just bring me into a different kind of market. So I think it's good to know which direction you want to head towards and what you want to build to.
Yeah. And I think it helps to have friends who are in the field who can kind of share how they are thinking through these things, like charging. But I mean,
Yeah.
when you first started, you didn't know anyone in the art field. So how did you begin to even build your network and have these kind of friends support you on the journey and understand where you are coming from?
Oh, I really had no idea. I did not know anyone who was a full-time artist at all. So it was really through gradual putting yourself out there. People respond to you, like Mike, for example. And then I went to the conference and I knew a bunch of people, including artists. And those artists introduced me to other artists, or those scientists or inventors introduced me to their artist friends. So it was really like just a gradual build up of connections.
And how did you build, because before you started as one person show and now you have a team around you. So how did that happen? When did you decide that this was the time where you needed a full-time team around you?
They don't work with me full time, but they are there for me quite a lot. They are, so my model is they are freelancers. They can still work on their own projects because I think that's important for artists. And but as with a lot of artists, we don't have full time work. So I do tell them, hey, I have this project coming up. It's going to be 2 to 3 months. Um, and would you be able to commit this time for me? So that's how we work, and I charge like I pay them on like a daily kind of basis. So I go, this is the day rate that I have, and just fill up your timesheet, and then by the end of this project, this is the fees. These are the fees for you. So that's worked better for me.
And how did you, at what point did you decide that it was time for you to get a team?
So I think it was last year that I worked with this team. But before that, it was more like me going to a factory and hiring like laborers to help me do things. But I realized that I needed like artists who knew how to like make things to work with me. So I think 2 years ago, I worked on this project called Pillars of Sabah. It's a community project, and like a friend and I, we gathered about 30 artists to come together to revamp this space in the middle of the city. And that was when I got to know local artists. And a lot of them work full-time. No, I think it's a combination of full-time artists and artists who work for companies 9 to 5. So it was, I think I reached out to those artists that were freelance full-time and gave them this offer, and I went, I might need a team sometimes. Do you want to work with me? And they're like, yeah, sure. So that's how it happened.
Amazing. And this whole Pillars of Sabah came about because you moved back from Shanghai and Melbourne to Sabah. Can you share with us why you decided to move back to Malaysia when most people would be tempted to go somewhere else, like the States, for instance?
Yeah, but I felt like I wasn't permanently back here because after Australia, I felt like Australia was too far for a lot of my clients, and a lot of my clients were in Asia. So I thought, okay, maybe like being back here with family and being more central was easier than flying out like 8 hours from Australia and then into Asia. So being in Sabah, it was so much easier to like fly to Singapore, KL, and Hong Kong and all that. And but at the same time, I was going back and forth the US as well. So I was flying quite a bit, like in this kind of region. So it didn't feel like I was kind of like just in KK the whole time.
So we talked about you working with teams now and also you having to fly quite a lot, but now we have COVID-19. So
Yeah.
how has that impacted your work?
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking to myself, I was like, oh, when was the last time I flew? This is the longest time I've been like sitting on my butt at one spot.
Speak to the world about this.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Maybe it's a good, I mean, it's a good thing for people who like fly too much too. But it's been, let's see, I think it's been good for my practice, to be honest. But it has brought a lot of anxiety and questions at the same time, as with all industries. It's like a massive upheaval of what's to come, and so I think when the lockdown happened, I went into this whole, oh my gosh, I have to work kind of mode. So that was when I started the whole series, the virus series, and then Seeds of Hope, and then I worked on a couple of artworks on the side to submit to like a,
When this is over, I will as well.
oh yeah, that too. Good memory. I need to update that site. And then and then and then and then I think a couple of artists from the Pillars group did contact me, and like they were like, how are you going? What's happening and all that. Like we're worried, right? And then so I still have a couple of ongoing projects and I'm working with them a little bit more. And there is this like monthly group. Von Wong is on it. He invited me to be in this monthly kind of gathering of creative minds on Zoom. We talk about it too. We're like, what is going to happen if 6 months down the line this continues? So it is about being flexible to change and rethinking how, I guess, the creative industry is going to be. Everything is moving like online, digitally right now. So I think we have to be open to possibly shifting a lot of work online even as well.
Do you think this shift is permanent for those in the art world?
There's like all these news articles going, the world's going to change permanently. Like this is going to be like forever change, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. No one knows, I think, at this point. But for sure, I think it's placed more importance on like digitalizing everything just in case things like this happen. And I think this is like the best. I'm not phrasing this right, but the best time to have a pandemic because we have like digital tools right now to keep connected. Imagine if this happened like, I don't know, 20-30 years ago.
Before
right?
smartphones.
Yeah, everyone would be like locked up at home and not connected to anyone.
Do you have any ideas of what your future will be and what your plans are?
So I think I do want to, I actually submitted my application to move to the States and try it out for the next at least like a couple of years. So that's still gonna happen. It's in progress, but of course it's a crazy time there still. And I think other than art, I'm dabbling in other things too that I'm excited about. That's gonna like I guess squeeze my creative juices in other ways. I'm not gonna reveal too much yet, but but yeah, I think I'm open to other kind of avenues of how I'm going to use my creativity as well.
Exciting. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you
I
for
normally
having me.
end with 3 quick questions. So
Ooh,
so the first one is, do you feel that you have found your why?
yes, I believe very much so that I found my why when it comes to art because it's always been a dream, and I'm very grateful to be able to do this. But I also believe that my whys can change with every decade, even, and I think I'm open to that change too.
And what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
That's a big one. That's really big.
I'm sure you're
I'm
a deep thinker and you've thought about this before.
gonna I'm gonna disappoint you because one of my like assistants asked me this a couple of months ago, and I told her I stole a quote from Charlie McKessie's thing, like book.
Who's
And
your
she was
favorite
like,
artist?
"Yeah, I love his work." And he was like, "What?" She was like, "Oh, Red, what legacy do you want to leave behind one day?" I was like, "To be kind." And she kind of I think she was like expecting this whole spiel about what kind of artist I wanted to like be and all that. But yeah, so that's my answer.
Brilliant. And what do you think are the most important qualities for someone who wants to succeed like you in your field?
Oh wow. I think you have to be determined, gritty, and optimistic. I think those are the first three ones. And maybe a little bit naive.
Yeah, just believe everything will work out no matter what. And
And then
finally,
when it doesn't, that's where the determination and grittiness comes in.
and the dad who sits you down, tells you, think about this as a business.
Yeah. You need a little bit of mom and dad, like my kind of mom and dad in you.
For sure. And where can people go to find you and follow what you're doing?
Oh, you can check out my like portfolio on redhongy.com, redhongy.com, and then go to Instagram and Facebook with the same handle, redhongy, and then you'll find me.
Brilliant. And is there anything else you want to share that we haven't covered so far?
Not that I can think of. I'm just really grateful to be able to share my journey so far.
And I'm really grateful that you took the time to be here. Thank you so much, Hongi.
Thank you as well, Inya.